Okay, so in lesson 2, you're going to learn how to work with selections and grouping and aligning and arranging in Adobe Illustrator. These are really essential skills so that you can work faster and more efficiently. So make sure that you go through the chapter very carefully and learn all the things you need to know so that you can work faster throughout the rest of the course. So at the end of it, you will end up with this finished project, and it starts out like this with a half finished piece and all these things over here. And what I'm going to do in this tutorial video is go over some of the things in the chapter, not all the things, so make sure you look through that. But I want to make sure to reiterate the really important stuff and also tell you other things that maybe the chapter doesn't cover. So the first thing is to talk about selections. And when I'm up here on the toolbar, there are 2 different selection tools I want to talk about. The first is the black arrow, which is called the selection tool. This is probably the main tool that you're going to use to move anything around. And then the direct selection tool, which is a white arrow. And this can also move things around, but really what it's meant for is to be able to move pieces of one object around. So let me demonstrate. First, with the selection tool, when you select anything, it's going to show up with this transform box around it. This allows you to hover on the outside and rotate it, which obviously doesn't show anything with a circle. And then you can also grab the corners to resize it and scale it. Notice that it doesn't keep its shape unless you hold shift. So if you want to constrain the object's proportions that you're resizing, make sure to hold the shift key. When you do this, let go of the mouse before you let go of the shift key so that it keeps those proportions. All right, I'm going to hit Control or Command Z to go back to the original. Now, what if you want to create another or 2 things, put 2 things in that selection? Well, if you click on the second one, it's just going to change the selection to that object. So in order to create 2 or more things in this selection, you can hold the shift key once one object is selected and then select the other. You can keep adding things by continuing to hold down shift and clicking on any of those things, and then all those things will move or resize together. So I'm going to undo that and go back to where it was supposed to be. And just so you can see, if you need to get things out of that group, like let's say I just wanted these 3 things, but not these 2 bamboo pieces, I can shift click again to deselect or remove things from that group. Okay, so basically you're just moving an object with the selection tool, but with the direct selection tool, you can see when an object is selected, it looks a little bit different. You see, instead of a transform box, you see these things called anchors, and they connect things called paths, which are basically the mathematical paths or boundaries of an object. Now mine look really big because I went up to my preferences section, selection and anchor display, and made sure to make those big so I could see them. I highly recommend you do this too. Now, if you were to just click in the middle of this object and drag it, it's going to look like it performs just like the selection tool. But where the power of the direct selection tool comes in is that you can select one of these pieces or 2 of these pieces or 3, and you can adjust it. So let me show you this. For right now, when I click on it, see how all 4 of them are selected? But if I click on one anchor, that one you can see is solid and these ones are all hollow. So that one, when I now click and drag it, I can adjust what that illustration looks like. So I can get like an egg shape going here. I can get a smile, clown smile going here. And I can adjust this in many different ways. I can also grab what are called handles and adjust the curve coming off of this. So I can create like a face shape. So that's the power of the direct selection tool, is that you can actually select parts of an object and adjust them independently. So I'm going to go ahead and undo that so we can go back to the original, and there we go. Now, another thing you can do is you can do a marquee selection. Well, first, let me tell you, if you hover over these, see how this says selection tool V and this says direct selection tool A? The V and the A are the keys that you would press on the keyboard to quickly switch to those tools. So right now, because I'm on the direct selection tool and I want to get to the selection tool, I'm going to hit the V key and it's going to switch to that tool. So this is a method that you're going to use a lot. It's called Marquee Selection. And Marquee Selection is basically drawing a square, an invisible square, around any objects you want to add to that selection. So if I click anywhere and just drag out, you can see this kind of dashed line that's following me. And anything that that line touches is going to be a part of the selection. So I can go ahead and click and those two things come a part of the selection. You don't even have to click to surround both of them. You just have to have it touch and it's going to add it. So you can also select, let's say, all of these things, and let's say I didn't want the bamboo in there. I can hold the shift key and then Marquee Select around those to get rid of those pieces. But that's a little bit more advanced. You probably don't need that right now. But just so you know, you can use a Marquee Selection in reverse to take some items out of your selection. Now, with Marquee Selection, the hard part is, let's say over here I wanted to move this fox face. So I'm going to move over here. I could be here, I could be down here, whatever, but I usually start from the top left and I go to drag around it, but see there was this background color behind, and so that's going to select that and move that. If I were to come all the way out here and select, I could select everything, but it's actually going to move that background with it. So one thing you can do is click on objects you don't want to move and go up to Object, Lock, and choose Lock Selection, or use the keyboard shortcut of Command or Control 2. So now that that's locked, I can come over here and drag around the fox's head and move it around. I can also resize it if needed. Remember, we don't want to do this, so I'm going to hold Shift to maintain or constrain those proportions. So I'm going to undo that just to be the right size. Now, just be careful that when you're selecting, see how it looks like I've pretty much selected everything and then I go to move it. I do this all the time and then I leave a piece behind, and sometimes I don't even know I leave a piece behind, and then I do all kinds of other steps after that, and then I have to come over here and put that nose back, and sometimes that's harder than it seems because getting it aligned perfectly isn't easy. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and undo that and then come back here. So I'm looking at the list of all the stuff that's covered in the chapter that I wanted to go over. Select similar. So select similar is really cool because it selects similar properties. So if things have the same fill color, you can select them all based on that fill color, their stroke, outline, whatever. So if I go up to select and choose same stroke color, let's see, stroke color, it's going to select all those objects. And so now I didn't have to draw a marquee, and especially if there was all kinds of other stuff behind it that prevented me from drawing a marquee, this is really helpful. And just know this select menu, this is where you can come to select all, deselect, reselect, do an inverse of the selection. There's all kinds of options in here, plus your keyboard shortcuts, because I always do Command or Control D to deselect. I think that works in Illustrator. I know it does in Photoshop. Now I'm second guessing myself. Anyway, so the other things that you're going to learn are arranging. So how to get one thing to sit on top of another, how to nest objects. So if I were to change the color of this, see how it's sitting on top. So you could come over here, right click and choose arrange and do send backward or send to back, depending on how many things are stacked. I actually use these keyboard shortcuts of Shift, Command, Left. So if you're on a PC, it'd be Shift, Control, left bracket, or Control left bracket just to send it all the way to the back. So that's another thing that you could practice. It also talks about grouping, and I just use the keyboard shortcut of Command or Control G to group something, and then those things will move together. So let's see. Oh, and alignment. Alignment I use all the time in Illustrator. It's going to help you to line things up really quickly and efficiently. So like these ones, if I wanted them all to align together in a straight column, I can click horizontal align center, and it takes the center point of all of those objects and it lines them all center. I can also evenly distribute so that all of these things have equal spacing between them. So that's really helpful, especially when I'm doing web design and I'm like making navigation buttons in my mock-up. It's really easy to select all those buttons and then have them distribute perfectly so they look balanced. Okay, so the last thing, and this is actually something I didn't know, there's this distribute spacing, and I'm going to go ahead and choose, well, shoot, it's not coming up for me. I don't know. Oh, because it's the artboard to selection. Oh, to the key object. So I'm going to choose this as the key object, and I'm going to take the spacing down. Well, that didn't work out for me. So make sure you look in the book because I didn't even know this distribute spacing thing. I've never even used it, and I've worked in Illustrator for 15 years. So I must have missed that update when it came out, but it's really cool. I don't know why it's not working right now. So again, that's why you should definitely go and look through that entire chapter. So I hope this helps give you an overview. I'm sorry it was really long, but yeah, make sure you get this stuff down, because this is going to go make things a lot faster and easier for you for the rest of the course.